and I have a really big SC2 focus this morning. Before we
One
get
second.
started, oh, okay, 1 second. Oh,
Sorry, I'm
because you
trying to
have
get it
to,
to YouTube.
I see. Well, you let me know. Before we get started, oh, okay, 1 second.
All right, now you're good.
Okay. Let's see here. I guess just make sure it's muted on your end, because then I hear myself for some reason when you're unmuted. Cool. All right, awesome. Well, let's go ahead and get started then. Today we're going to have a really big SC2 focus. I do want to ask you guys before we go ahead and dive in here, if any of you have had a chance to do the PRPC with your people. So pilot, have you guys been able to do the PRPC with anybody, the one that we talked about on the last call?
We actually have not. We had one maybe, but not effectively. We have all those set up for today and tomorrow.
Oh, right. Yesterday was 4th of July, so maybe you guys haven't had a chance to do it yet, but awesome. You guys have those set up.
Yep.
Jordan, Cameron, Eric, do you guys have anything set up in your offices yet for the PRPC?
I don't.
Not yet. Okay, cool. So do you think you'll be able to get some set up for today or tomorrow so you can get started on that?
Yeah, I could probably set up today for after training.
Nice. Cool. Cameron, Eric, any plans for you guys for PRPCs?
I got one set up for tomorrow morning. Training.
Awesome. Awesome.
Yeah, tomorrow morning.
Sweet. And Jay, I saw you just hopped on. Do you have any PRPC scheduled for your office in the next couple days?
No, I do most of my PCs early in the week, but I can definitely call some people and get some people in.
Yeah, for sure. So I encourage you just to watch the last call. We talked about the quick PRPC, and it's just super crucial in these weeks in between SC2 to be able to PR your best people, because your best people are, they're going to perform for SC2, but the way that you take that to the next level is by having their friends come in and perform as well. So I just want to make sure you guys are set up for success. There's always going to be strength in numbers. And that's one way where if you're not super well versed on how to get the most productivity out of people, if you have like a bunch of people on your team, like it's pretty hard to fail, So that's kind of one goal in between SC1 and SC2 is to just get the team as big as you possibly can. But one thing that I do want to focus on today is teaching you guys how to really get productivity from each and every representative on your team. So we're just going to dive in here into the meat and potatoes of getting that productivity. And one thing that I'll focus on a ton is really PDI during SC2. But as a precursor to that, I just want to talk about, aside from the PRPC, which we were diving into a couple days ago, is I want to dive into really setting up somebody's schedule that's non-alliance. So we did talk about like an alliance schedule and like planning the pre, the during, and the post push. But for people that aren't going to be on alliance, and when I refer to alliance, I'm talking about the 10K alliance and above, like 6K alliance, whatever. That's just something that we say to get more people in the morning. But like the true alliance is like the 10K alliance, right? So I want to talk about all the rest of the people on the team. And the reason why I want to talk about that is during the push, you're not really going to be focusing on them. But we don't want to forget about them either. So the best way to ensure that you're getting productivity from the bottom 80% of your team, which is still very, very, very valuable, is to have a really great scheduling PC before the push actually starts. So I encourage you guys to get a PC with the bottom 80% of your team. And for the pilot or larger offices, what I would suggest is making sure that you really dive in with your staff and give them really great direction on how to have these PCs with the bottom 80% of your team. That way you can put more of your focus on the top 20%. But if you have less than 20 representatives on your team right now, you personally as a manager probably have time to conduct a PC with everybody in the next couple weeks before SC2 actually kicks off. And these PCs don't have to be done one-on-one. You can team up people that have matching schedules, matching career sales. You know your team better than me, so you'll know who you'll be able to do 2 people at a time with. But let's go ahead and dive into the scheduling. So the first thing that I'll tell you is you have to identify with each representative what their level of commitment is during this time. And for people that aren't on Alliance, it's okay to ask them to commit a little bit more than they usually do. But you don't want to push them too much where they completely stop working and they feel too much pressure. Not everybody is a competitive person, and not everybody thrives in a competitive environment. And usually people who don't are people who shy away from being on Alliance. And then you have other people who just don't have that time commitment, right now. So there's 2 different conversations that you can have. And so for the first one, for the second one, people who don't have the time commitment, but they usually would be super competitive, the conversation that I normally have with them is on the day I tell them, hey, like, I know you're super competitive, and if you had the time, I know you would absolutely like crush this whole entire push period, and you would be number 1 or whatever, it is that you want to promote to them. However, I don't, there, push is different for different people. Like, obviously there's the Alliance pushing, and I know that you want to be involved in whatever in the future. One way that you can make this a really great push for you is not necessarily going full out the whole push just because time constraints are not allowing you to, but on the days that you're available, like, make that your mini push. All right. So that's the conversation you have with them. What days are you available? Can you make those days a mini push? And hey, if you can make a mini push out of, 5 days or 7 days, if we get your average order up, you can still have a blank amount push. And you will have people that have that, people that weren't on 10K Alliance who have now dedicated themselves to having a mini push on the days that they do have time to do demos, who will sell 7,000, 10,000, and maybe even a little bit more than that. But it takes this conversation right now. So that's the conversation for somebody who would have wanted to be on Alliance but can't because it's just not going to work out. So when I make that person's schedule, I'm going to make it's the same schedule as an Alliance member's day, just they're not working every single day. So let's say they're working 3 days. On those 3 days, their schedule should be come in the morning, go to Alliance, make phone calls, go on their demos. And if they're not on a demo, they should be making calls, right? So that's an Alliance schedule. And that's the schedule somebody like that would be doing during this push. And some of your sharpest people sometimes may not be on 10K Alliance because maybe they are taking a summer class or something. So this is a great way to really boost their production during this time without making them feel bad for not fully committing, to the push. They're just they have their own like self-commitment. And okay, so that's that person. Then the second person are the people that are not competitive, not interested in being on Alliance. The conversation that I have with them is just on top of the regular like scheduling PC that you would have on a weekly basis, just like, hey, SC2's here. And now I know you're not competing during this time. I know you're not a part of the Alliance, but everything that you do still helps the team and still helps our goal to be number 1 or whatever, the goal for that for you is for SC2. And even though you're not going to be, part of the starting lineup, you can still contribute in a big way. Now, I know you normally do blank amount of demos, and this is kind of your segue. I know you normally do blank amount of demos. Now, during this time, and you can say no, if you need to, but is there any way you can squeeze in either 1 to 2 more demos or work 1 to 2 more days? Which one do you feel like would work best in your schedule? And based on what they say, you go from there. So some people would be like, you know what, during this time, I could definitely help out by working 1 or 2 more days. Okay, great. What days are those? During this time, I don't think I commit to a full day, but I can commit to doing 1 or 2 more demos. Okay, great. What day can you fit in 1 to 2 more demos? All right. So that's the path that you're going with there. Now, once you kind of determine, where somebody is going to fall during the push, I like to categorize them on WebPDI or whatever system that you're using. And this kind of goes hand in hand with what we talked about in the call series before the summer, which is separating people from super part-time to kind of full-time to like the gunners, the scholarship winners, right? So how do I identify that? People that can commit to doing 7 to 10 demos a week, those are people I would consider super part-time. And I did a whole breakdown for you guys where how many hours they'd actually be working if they were super part-time. And if somebody was super part-time doing 7 to 10 demos a week, they'd basically be working, I think it's like 15 hours a week between phone jam and coming to the and going to their demo, drive time, all that stuff. And if you work a regular job, if you're working 10 to 15 hours, like that's barely part-time. Like part-time is like 25 hours, you know? So somebody who's working part-time would be somebody who has like 11 to 15 demos in their week, because their total working time is going to be like 20 to 25 hours. Somebody who I would categorize as full-time would be somebody working 16 to 20 demos a week, because they would have, 30 to 35 hours in their week that they would be working Cutco between phone jams, team meeting, and going to their demos. And then we have the people that are going above and beyond, which are the gunners. Those people during SC2 are really the 10K Alliance. So those aren't even considered the bottom 80%. But anybody who's not on full out schedule, like a gunner, I would categorize them in those 3 sections. Now, why do we categorize these people? Well, this ties into SC2 PDI. During SC2, you don't have time to really mess around and not focus on your alliance. However, if there is ever a down period where you're not talking to somebody who's on a demo and you're not doing a round of PDI, you want to be able to categorize who the next best people are to talk to. And so if your gunners are taken care of, who's the next people you want to talk to are the ones that are going to be the most productive, which are your almost full-time or your full-timers. So you would then move to that section in web PDI, and so on and so forth. So your goal is not like, oh, let me just ignore everybody else. Your goal is, how can I talk to the most people every single day? But also at the same time, make sure that you're having quality conversations. I would value a quality conversation over the number of people that you talk to. However, if you're getting both and you are already gone through like your gunners and everything, then, prioritize the next best section. Some of you might have the luxury of having an assistant with you 1 to 2 days a week, or maybe one every single day, like we talked about. If you have 7 a.m.s, you should have one person assisting you every single day, and they're selling the rest of the time. But if you don't, and you only have somebody for like 1 or 2 days, now you can kind of compile a section for them to talk to on that day. Don't split the gunners with them. You take the gunners, give them the next best section. So now this helps you prioritize. Okay. And even when people come into the office for like PCs and stuff like that, you can just automatically open that list and see, okay, who are people I can PC together, who have similar schedules, who are people that I have to PC separately. And, it helps you delegate to your assistants. So just make sure that you have this kind of set up before SC2. So now diving into actual SC2 PDI. So there's a little bit of pre-PDI that has to be done before SC2 actually begins, then SC2 PDI, what that looks like. So before SC2 actually begins, when you're on PDI with people, or even make an announcement in your team meeting, you need to let everybody know that your energy during this time is going to be a little bit different. Now, why do we do this? This prevents a couple different things. Number one, it's going to prevent your bottom 80% from quitting, okay? Because what happens is that sometimes they're used to you like talking to them every day, or at least on the days that they work. And then SC2 comes and you don't talk to them that much, then they don't do anything. And we know no production equals no paycheck. No paycheck equals no team member. So that person's going to naturally quit. And usually for people that aren't fully staffed, you are going to have a higher, quitting percentage than somebody else, just because you simply don't have staffing to take care of every single person on your team, which is fine. However, that can be prevented, or we can make that number smaller by just telling them in advance. It's all about communication. So if you tell them in advance, like, hey, during this time, things are very intense and I might not have a chance to talk to you on a daily basis or on the days that you work like we normally are right now. I might only have a chance to talk to you, when you're on a demo. But because of that, and because of the craziness during this period, like, I want to make sure that we have a good plan in place. That way you still feel supported and you still feel like you have, you still have me here coaching you day by day. So instead, we're just going to plan very well for this time. And that's literally what you're going to do. You're going to talk every single possible situation out. So another great tool that you can use is giving them a check-in time or inviting them to Alliance and say, hey, because we're in this crazy period, normally, you only come in twice a week, but I think it'd be really helpful for me and you to get, FaceTime, at least even if it's for like 5 minutes during the week, one-on-one. So how about you come into Alliance on Tuesday or on Wednesday, and for 5 minutes, we'll just review your schedule real quick and make sure that you're supported and ready to go for these weeks. And another thing that I bring up with them is how brief I'm going to be on PDI. When it's normal time or downtime, usually you can debrief, demos with people. Like I remember JD used to like to call me and give me a 10-minute story of, his demo. Like he would tell me all about his customer. He would tell me all about how the appointment went, how many recommendations he got, what he thinks could have gone better. And those calls were great. And they were very great for teaching him. It was a great teaching tool in the downtime. But during SC2, he knew when he called me, it was just going to be like, all right, what happened? Okay, this is what you have to do now. All right, perfect. Goodbye. But we had a conversation before SC2, and he knew that I wasn't going to be able to listen to everything. So he didn't feel ignored when I had to cut him off on the phone. He would actually be excited. I would be like, oh my gosh, I really want to listen to you, but I have another rep calling me. I'll talk to you soon. Great job on your appointment. I'll call you later, once demos are done so we can debrief the day. And he would be like, oh yeah, cool, awesome. Like go close those sales and, whatever, we'll talk soon. So instead of it being a negative impact on him, it was actually positive. He would look forward to us talking, after hours versus in that moment. So you have to just say all of these things in advance. And I know it sounds silly and it sounds so small, but to our representatives, our time is like so big and so important to them. So in those small moments where we're able to impact people, we're also able to deter people from producing. So in order to keep production up, it's just making sure that they feel supported, making sure they know when they're supposed to do demos and when they're supposed to make phone calls. So setting it up in advance, huge. So once that's pretty much taken care of, bottom 80% has their schedule. They know that you're not going to be like super supportive, but maybe you can get them in for Alliance a couple days of the week. And for those who would have wanted to push but can't push because of time, they're definitely going to be coming in a couple times a week on the days that they work for Alliance. That's pretty much going to take care of itself because you're managing them basically as they show up or as they call you, unless you have time to call them or schedule them to come in. But let's talk about your actual Alliance and PDIing them and making sure that they have a good understanding of how PDI is going to work during the push. Okay. This is important, whether you have 1 or 100 people on Alliance. The main key to getting people through Alliance and getting people through the push is accountability. Okay. And the way that we hold people accountable is through PDI. And the way that you can hold people accountable through PDI is by setting it up in advance and sticking to the plan that you made. The biggest thing, like one of the biggest reasons I feel a lot of managers don't retain their people all the way through the push, or at least retain them on the Alliance, is because the intensity of which they promote SC2 is like they personally don't pull through with that same intensity throughout the push. Like they tell people, oh, if you're not here on time, this is going to happen. Or, if you're not in a demo, you need to be making phone calls. And then when the time comes for it, they don't personally put in the effort to make sure that people are actually doing that from day one. So then at the end of the push, they're like trying to scrape for sales and then they're pushing people at the end when it really, they should have been doing that from day one. The only reason why the averages play out and magic happens at the end is not because we procrastinated throughout the push and last minute got demos. It's because we worked hard all throughout. So the averages play themselves out. So don't be that person who on the last day is wishing you would have done more as a manager. And then you're like trying to scrape and get sales. Those sales should have come naturally because the averages played themselves out, not because you procrastinated. So just know your representatives can only be as good as the effort that you put into them. And even then, let's say you give them 100%, they're going to give you 80%. So if you want them to give you 100%, like you have to go above and beyond for them. And you have to do the same thing with your accountability. So here's a really great example. When you have your 10K Alliance PC with somebody, and I was actually, I didn't get reminded to send the SC2 script, and that's on me. I should have just remembered, but I'm going to send you the SC2 Alliance script when like you're onboarding them into Alliance. That way you guys have it, but one conversation that you have with them is just the pace of the day, which is like you come to Alliance, you make calls, you go to demos. If you're not on a demo, you make phone calls. Whenever you do PDI from day one on for Alliance, whenever you talk to somebody, you, number one, in advance, you must have their schedule. That's why I like the demo tracker, because I can see when their next appointment is. So let's say they leave the office and it's 9 o'clock and their demo's at 9:30. They do their demo, they're done, and it's 11 o'clock. And their next demo is not until, let's say, 1 o'clock. When you before you hang up the phone with them, you always look at your demo tracker, look for their next demo. If you talk to them, it's 11 o'clock and their next demo is not till 1, before you hang up the phone, if you saw that on the demo tracker, you will instantly know to have them make calls, or you can coach them to get an immediate appointment in between that 1 o'clock. It's something so small, but when you do it often enough, you're going to get those representatives that get immediate appointments or book a money demo because they made phone calls during that time. And that's instantly going to increase your production and also help you hold them accountable so that they know the intensity of the push. They don't just like automatically inherit this knowledge that, okay, I have to be working 24/7 during this push. You literally need to coach them every single step of the way. So, and anybody who pushes back on that with you, you just remind them of their commitment. You remind them of the contract that they signed. You remind them of the PC that you had with them where you told them it was going to be this intense, right? So from that first day, they leave the office, go to a demo, they have some time in between. It's like, all right, cool. What are we doing right now to create more sales? What are we doing right now to create more appointments? And I always like to ask to create more appointments, because creating appointments is an action-based, question, versus creating more sales. They have to think about what action to take to get there. And really creating appointments, is the answer is making more phone calls, right? Which eventually leads to more sales. So when they finish a demo, constantly ask them, all right, what are we doing right now to create more appointments? And see if they can get an immediate, like I said, or see if they can, and something else too, is see if they can get into their next demo early. Might also be a helpful thing as well that they can do in between that time to create more appointments. Teaching them how to leapfrog and make sure that they're doing that after each appointment, which is when they finish their demo and they get recommendations if they have time, seeing if that person can walk them over to their neighbor. This is something that I did personally as a PSM because I had no time to sell. So when I could do like one demo, I always tried to see if I could do an immediate after. And actually, we got a call into the office for a service call out in Katy, and I went to do the service call, and I sold them a pocket knife, and I said, hey, by the way, like, since I'm a manager, I literally have no time to show people Cutco, but I love to do appointments. Can you introduce me to their neighbor? And they were like, oh, you have to meet our neighbor. He'll buy anything. He buys so much stuff. And that person came over and they bought a homemaker with grills, and I threw in something for free for the neighbor recommending them. And so it turned like a $60 CPO sale into like over $1,000, right? So giving stories like that and teaching your representatives to do that is going to be huge during the push as well. But again, it's just enforcing that intensity and enforcing that commitment from the first day, or else the end of the push doesn't really matter. And if you do that, the reason why I bring this up, if you do that throughout especially the first day and the first few days, and you enforce that, they're going to do that all throughout the push. And the PDI, instead of it becoming like constantly telling them what to do and constantly giving tips, it can be quick. It's like, hey, what are you doing? Okay, what are you going to do now? And they're going to give you the responses that you want. Hey, how was your demo? Oh, it was great. How many recs? How much CPO? Okay, awesome. What are you doing now? Oh, I'm going to make calls because my next one, isn't until 2 o'clock. So like they're automatically going to be programmed and trained to do the right action, after the push or after their demo. And the great thing about that is, let's say you were on the call for a demo, you were closing a sale and you couldn't pick up their phone call or something, you can feel confident knowing that you've trained them to do the right action after their appointment. So if you didn't talk to them, there were times where some of my top people, and when I say very few, I mean like one or two, because I want to make sure I talked to every single person. But if I couldn't get to like my top one or two people, like the people that I had a ton of confidence in, and I would call them back later on to finally get their result. And I asked them what they did. They'd be like, oh, I went on my demo. My next one wasn't until 3. So I made calls in the driveway. I went to my demo and then I leapfrogged. Like, they knew exactly what to do. And that's how you get your representatives to that point. It's like just enough self-sufficiency where, they feel free, but not too much where, you let the reins too loose a little bit and then they just do whatever they want. But again, it's just making sure that you have the right tone. That's how you're going to get the most production out of your 10K Alliance. It's literally just accountability, because everything is spelled out for them. Everything, their schedule, when they're supposed to come in, when they're supposed to make calls. And so there should be no question there. The only thing that's going to tell the tale of their level of intensity is your level of intensity. So just make sure you keep the right intensity up. I do want to make sure to mention that there's a very fine line between being a desperate manager and being a manager that is encouraging a higher level of results. Okay. So it's very easy during SC2 to kind of look at where results are and become unfocused or start sounding too desperate because the sales aren't there. Like I said, it's a very, very fine line. One thing that I encourage you to do is just check in with yourself throughout the day. And anytime that you start feeling, too desperate for sales, or you're getting too mad that people aren't selling the amount that they're selling, you need to take a pause. You need to step away from the PDI. You need to just remind yourself that the numbers are going to play themselves out. And when there's big goals, there's big challenges, and big results do happen, but you have to go through big shit too. So, big goals are going to equate big challenges, a ton of stuff that you have to go through in a day. And I remember in 2016 in SC2, after we had just come off like a record breaking SC1 for us, and this is the summer of like John Austin, John Bose, Adrian Gonzalez, Barbara, like a great summer, Taylor having like her huge push, like an amazing summer, an amazing SC1. And I remember the first 2 days of SC2, Kathy and I had to get refocused because we realized we were just going too hard on sales, and we were being too hard on ourselves as managers and too hard on the representatives about the amount of sales that they were getting, that we weren't being effective. We weren't coaching properly. So we had to take a pause, step back, kind of step away from the PDI and be like, okay, we need to refocus. We just need to be encouraging, loving, awesome, supportive, and making sure we're guiding them to do the right actions, because the numbers are going to play themselves out. So just don't get to that line of desperation. Just constantly check in with yourself and remind yourself that you just need to promote action and have faith. If you have faith in the numbers and you have faith in the averages, everything is going to work itself out. All right. And that trickles down your representatives, because if you get too desperate, then your representatives get too desperate, and they get too desperate asking for orders. And then we know when people operate out of a place of scarcity that they get less sales and they don't get the sales that they want. So you have to operate out of that mentality, of abundance, that everything is going to happen for them as long as they put in, the right amount of work. So just make sure you have that focus on PDI. The next thing that I wanted to go over, and then I wanted to just kind of get feedback and go through some questions, was, I'm losing my train of thought. Give me 1 second. Okay, we talked about the pre-PDI. We talked about during the focus that you wanted to have. And then I want to talk about, so just to like nitty gritty things in terms of what they actually should know for SC2, like what kind of closing they should do, just to review that very, very quickly. You always want them to do the closing that they're most confident with. And I have that document, and I'll resend it out, of what to teach them and when. Just follow that document, and wherever they land on that scale, encourage them to use that close during SC2, even if it's just the kitchen system close. They're always going to close more sales and higher sales using the close that they're confident with. So don't stress out if not everybody on your team is doing the kitchen close, because if you're a good manager and you're good at closing sales, as long as they call in, you're always going to be able to upsell. Okay, so don't feel like you're losing sales by somebody not using the kitchen close, and then you teach it to them last minute out of desperation because you want them to close the kitchen. First of all, people aren't closing kitchens left and right during SC2. It's just if you ask for a kitchen, it's more likely people are going to buy more package deals, right? And so you, if they start asking for those orders without confidence, like they're going to get like a bunch of piece orders. Like they're not even going to get package deals. They're not even going to sell signature. They're not even going to sell homemaker. So just have them use the closes that they're most confident with. And this week would be a really great time if you wanted to teach them the next close, because they have enough time to complete 10 to 15 appointments before SC2 actually starts, so that they can feel confident with a new close. So if you are going to teach one, I would teach one now. And if they still don't get it after 10, 15 appointments, encourage them to go to the one that they're the most comfortable with, even if it's the one in the manual. Okay. So really quick, I know we lost some people, but probably due to training, getting started soon, but just wanted to get some quick feedback. And then I have comments for the end, but I wanted to take some Q&A and see if you had any questions about SC2 management or just SC2 in general. So we'll go Jay, Ryan, and then Spencer for feedback first.
No questions, but I do really love the idea of like, do you think that you could possibly work 1 or 2 more days, or just do 1 or 2 more demos? That way it's like kind of a yes or yes question. And so that way they're committing to at least doing a couple more demos in the worst case.
Yeah, exactly. And it also helps them feel like they're contributing to this push without, being on the front line of it. Cool.
For
So
sure.
let's go to Ryan. Feedback, questions.
Yeah. So Spencer's teaching a workshop, but
Okay, cool.
I definitely have some feedback. Or some questions, kind of feedback really. So I think the talking to the bottom 80% and getting them set up, feeling like they're prepared is great. And then, not necessarily having long daily check-ins, but knowing that they are contributing to the group as a whole, and that it's not that you're rejecting them in that moment, but you're working for the group. And having them feel like they're a part of that is super important. So talking about the vision with them and having them in, and even saying, hey, I know that you're contributing maybe 1 or 2 demos a day, but maybe I know you don't have any class or something on Friday, so why don't you also help out there? And then when it comes to PDI for like the top 20%, is there anything else on like a daily basis that you want to instill in them, or like ask them about their motivations, and how do you really get them? Let's just say like they don't have multiple demos in one day, and you want them to have more. What are some more probing questions, like when it comes to what's your motivation? Why are you doing this, that you could ask them?
That's a really great question. So the first thing that comes to mind is that you always go back to their contract, right? Or you go back to their PC, and you should know those things from before, and then you remind them throughout, like, hey, don't forget that you're doing this for this, or you can ask check-in questions through. And some of these reps you have been working with all summer, so you have a good feeling of where their head's at and when. Like, you'll probably know when they're feeling neg before they do, and you can call them out on it and ask them like, hey, I noticed that you're acting like this, or do you feel like this? Like, talk to me, tell me what's up. And sometimes it just might take a couple minutes of a listening ear to get them back on track. But just be very aware of who your top people are, and know those motivations before. That way you can bring them up during the push. If it's not somebody that super well, and maybe they're new and you've gotten them on the alliance and they're sharp and you just got them last minute, then you might need to sit down and have a little bit of a longer conversation. But my suggestion would be to kind of table it for later. So I would tell them like, hey, like, I can tell you're kind of feeling blank way right now. I have to make X amount more phone calls, but I'd love to just talk with you a little bit more, and like set a callback time for when you're not super busy on PDI, or for early morning to have that conversation, because you don't want to have that conversation at a time where you could be producing, more. And it sounds kind of bad because you want to help that representative, but if you can have that conversation at a different time, but hold on, let me pause. There are times where those conversations are urgent, because something crazy just happened. Like, somebody died, there's a car accident, so, or, their car broke down or something like that, and they might need a little bit of emotional support. So those would be exceptions to that. But if somebody is just like kind of not doing what they're supposed to do, then that might be a conversation that you can save for a little bit later on. But as far as the actual probing questions, that would literally be just based on what they told you pre-push. And then you're just reminding them of that.
Got it. Thank you.
You're welcome. Cool. Anything else? All right, sweet. So if nothing else, then Roman says, I want to speak.
Allow him to talk.
Go ahead.
Hello.
Go.
Okay, I have a voice. Can you one more time go over the 3 groups when you're doing the PDI during the SC2? I know the top one is the gunners.
Mm-hmm.
What were
Yes.
the other 2?
Yes, let me go over that, and I'll give you the hours again. That way
Yeah, it
you
was like
know.
less than 10 and like 11 to 15.
Yeah. Let me actually pull up the document here. Maybe I can share my screen with you guys.
Sweet.
Let's see. It'll just take a second. You guys have a lot of people set up for training today?
Like 60. So had 70, but a bunch of reschedules and cancels. So
Sucks for them. Okay.
yep, they're lost.
Share. Okay, can you guys see this?
Oh yeah.
Okay, cool. So I have it broken down here. So a super part-time schedule, and I would just call these guys like almost like the hobby people, like the ones that are doing this as a hobby. So it'd be team meeting, which is a 2-hour jam, average 5 to 7 demo set. Then a paycheck meeting is an hour. They would usually get 2 to 3 set. So they basically don't have to phone jam at home, but they should have 7 to 10 demos set by the end of the week, which would equal 13 to 15 hours worked. And those are the average earnings right there. So that would be one section. Then you have your part-timers, which they would be coming to the team meeting jam, the paycheck meeting jam, and a Thursday jam, which would give them 11 to 15 demo set, which is 16 to 21 hours worked. And then that's the average earnings for that. Then full-timers, which would be coming to team meeting, coming to paycheck, and then on Thursday doing a 2-hour jam. And then 16 to 20 demos set. You'll notice that I don't have phoning at home on here, and really I like to encourage them phoning at the office. The only time I'd give them an option otherwise is if they like live super far or they can't come in.
Okay.
But we all know that when they phone at home, they don't do anything.
True.
Cool.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Any other questions, push related or not push related? That's fine. Okay, cool. Now, if you do have questions later on, just random stuff throughout the day, I'm available over email or text, and I'll just throw that on the group me, and you guys can ask anything that you might want to know. But I'm not super available for a phone call, mainly just email and text. But cool. Well, thanks for being on the call today, and we'll get the day and time for the next one. I'll post on group me.
Have a great day, Mary Lou.
You too, guys. Bye.
Lou.